You know that feeling. You want to really get something, understand it deeply, but there's just so much information flying around,
Yeah, it's overwhelming sometimes.
which is exactly why we do these deep dives.
Trying to pull out the core stuff, the bits that really resonate.
And today, we're diving into something pretty special, actually. A source one of you listeners sent over, issue no, 57 of the Mindfulness Bell from summer 2011.
Ah, the Mindfulness Bell. Great journal. If you haven't seen it, it's all about mindful living in Thich Nhat Hanh's tradition.
Right. And this particular issue, it's packed. There's such a mix of things in here.
Like what?
Well, you've got Dharma talks from Thich Nhat Hanh himself.
Yeah.
Really personal stories from monks, nuns, lay people.
Okay.
Insights, poems, even art. It gives you all these different angles on mindfulness practice.
A really rounded view.
So the mission, basically, that you set for us was to dig into this issue and pull out the key nuggets about monastic life, about mindful living.
And do it efficiently, right? Get the S's without getting bogged down. Exactly. Quick but thorough. And hopefully spark some of those little aha moments along the way. So, okay, let's jump in. Where do we start?
Well, the issue kicks off with a really foundational Dharma talk by Thich Nhat Hanh. It's called Make a True Home of Your Love.
Make a true home of your love. Okay.
And it really sets the stage for a lot of the personal stories that come later.
So what's the core message there?
The big idea is that our real home isn't a building or a place.
Yeah.
It's something inside us.
Something we build through mindfulness.
Exactly. Through being present right here, right now. He even talks about the Vietnamese phrase, nhà tôi.
Not toy.
Yeah, it means my home. But culturally, spouses might use it to refer to each other, like the other person is their home.
Oh, that's lovely. So like my home works at the post office, meaning my wife does.
Precisely. Or my home decorated this room, meaning the husband. It shows that deep, deep connection.
But he then flips it a bit, right?
He does. He emphasizes that first, you have to be your own true home. You need to cultivate that inner refuge yourself before you can offer it to someone else.
Exactly. You can't really offer stability if you don't have it inside first.
And how does that connect to practice?
He links it directly to the Plum Village practice of hearing the bell. You know, you stop, you breathe.
Ah, right. That pause.
That pause becomes an anchor. It brings you right back to your inner home instantly, no matter what chaos is around you.
It's like a mini reset button to the present.
Grounding yourself in the breath.
There's a story in there too, isn't there? About feeling safe.
Yes. A woman from the UK visiting Plum Village. She was staying in the upper hamlet where the monks live.
Okay.
And she said she'd never felt so safe in her entire life, in a place full of men she didn't know.
Wow. And Thay uses that to illustrate
How the collective energy of the Sangha building creates that atmosphere of safety, safety being a key part of home.
the community as a home.
Yeah, that's a huge theme. But he also kind of nudges the listener, like, are you a safe place for others? Are you contributing that?
That's a good question. He also gets into intimacy, doesn't he?
He does. He outlines three kinds. There's the physical or sexual,
Okay.
then emotional intimacy, and finally spiritual intimacy.
And the key is that they're connected.
Deeply interconnected. He really stresses that sexual intimacy. Without that emotional and ideally spiritual connection, it can actually be quite destructive, or at least unfulfilling.
Not just about the physical act.
Right. It needs that grounding in feeling connected, understood.
And this ties into loneliness too.
Definitely. He says loneliness is this deep human ache, right? But you can't just fix it with sex.
It doesn't work that way.
No. The real healing comes from finding comfort within yourself first, building that inner home we talked about.
So turning inwards rather than always looking outwards for a solution.
Exactly. It challenges that common impulse.
Then there's the part about suffering. How does that fit in?
It's crucial. He talks about acknowledging our suffering, not pushing it away, but turning towards it gently, with mindfulness.
Like saying hello to it.
Kind of. He uses this phrase, my suffering, I know you are there. I am home, and I will take care of you.
Wow. That's gentle.
It is.
Yeah.
That simple act of recognition, of holding it mindfully, that's the start of understanding. And then compassion, healing.
And this idea of inner being, how does that connect?
Ah, yes, interbeing. The idea that my suffering isn't just mine.
It contains other suffering.
Yeah. The suffering of my parents, my ancestors, the world. It's all woven together. Understanding my own pain helps me understand others.
It breaks down that feeling of isolation.
Exactly, and fosters empathy.
And the Sangha comes back here too.
Big time. He points out that the Buddha's very first teaching after enlightenment was about building a Sangha.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah. So the community isn't just nice to have, it's fundamental, a collective home, a refuge.
Okay. There's also something about reverence for the body.
Yes, really interesting. He mentions Asian traditions like treating your spouse respectfully, like an honored guest. And this Vietnamese custom, not touching someone's head if you don't know them well, because the head is seen as sacred, like an altar.
Like a sacred space.
Exactly. And he uses this to talk about the devastating impact of sexual abuse.
As a violation of that sacred space.
Precisely, causing such deep, lasting wounds, often from a very young age. It really lands the importance of respecting boundaries.
And he contrasts this reverence with societal pressures.
Right. How society pushes fleeting pleasures, sensual stuff, often ignoring deeper needs like understanding, love.
And the pressure to look a certain way.
Yeah, those narrow beauty standards, they stop us from just accepting our bodies as they are, as our home.
Making it harder to feel at home in our own skin.
Creates that constant dissatisfaction.
But he ends that section on a positive note.
A really beautiful one. He basically says, you are already beautiful right now, just as you are. You don't need to be someone else to find your true home inside.
That's powerful self-acceptance.
Exactly.
Okay, so that sets a really strong foundation. Now, the second big theme in the issue.
Yeah.
These personal stories, right?
Yeah.
Journeys into monastic life.
Yes. And these are fantastic. They really show these principles in action. Real people, real transformations.
It makes it less abstract.
Totally. You get these intimate glimpses into why people choose this path, the struggles, the breakthroughs.
So who do we hear from first?
There's Sister Annabelle. She talks about her 23 years as a nun in the Plum Village tradition.
23 years. Wow.
Yeah. And she shares how she didn't tell her parents at first, worried they wouldn't get it.
Oh, that must have been tough.
But eventually, they not only accepted it, they actually started seeming more, mindful themselves, more monk and nun-like, as she puts it.
That's amazing. The ripple effect.
Isn't it? And she also tells this incredible story about going to Vietnam to transmit the 5 mindfulness trainings.
Okay.
And facing trouble with the security police. They were trying to stop her.
Whoa, so she persisted.
She did. It shows her commitment, her deep connection to sharing the practice, even when it was risky.
Real dedication.
Yeah.
And who's next?
And then we have Seyfap Ann's story. And this one is incredibly moving. He talks about overcoming this deep sadness, almost depression, that started way back in his childhood.
Related to the war.
Yeah, the Vietnam War. It casts this long shadow. It's a powerful look at how trauma can stick with you, unconsciously sometimes.
And how much work it takes to heal.
So much dedication. He talks about wanting a spiritual path early on, trying meditation. He was actually a mathematical researcher before becoming a monk.
Oh, interesting transition.
Right. But even in the monastery, with Thay's teachings, he still struggled to feel joy.
Even in that supportive place.
Yeah. It shows the inner work is still primary, It takes time.
Was there a turning point for him?
There was. A young woman just gently pointed out to him, you seem sad. Just a simple observation. Yeah. And then Thay compassionately guided him, not with more theory, but pointing him towards the beauty around him. Like, really see the flower, feel the sky.
Shifting his focus to direct experience.
Exactly. Bypassing the mind chatter. And he describes how he started consciously working with his war memories in meditation.
Like facing the trauma directly.
Yes, vividly. Remembering hiding in a medicine cabinet during attacks. Things like that. It helps him see the roots of his sadness, this feeling that the future was meaningless.
Wow. Connecting the past to the present feeling.
He even linked his migraines at sunset to soldiers coming to his house back then, re-triggering.
That makes sense. So how did he shift things?
Gradually. Mindful walking, really noticing beauty. He also changed his diet, stopped eating dinner, and surprisingly, it helped his colon and his depression.
Body and mind connection again.
Totally. And then, after years of practice, he describes this moment. He could finally feel the blue sky.
Feel the blue sky. What an image.
Isn't it just pure liberation, a testament to sticking with the practice?
Incredible. Who else shares their journey?
There's brother Chan Phap too.
Yeah.
His story is fascinating because he has this really multicultural background.
Wow.
Connections to Islam, Tibetan Buddhism, before finding Plum Village.
So he explored different paths.
Right. He was even ordained as a novice by the Dalai Lama at one point.
Wow.
But it was going to a Plum Village retreat that really clicked. He realized how important the community aspect was, the brotherhood, the sisterhood.
That sense of belonging.
Yeah, that was key for him. And then Thay actually asked him to help renew Buddhism in Indonesia.
A big responsibility.
Huge. But he talks about his true colors, including all these different threads, grounded in the present moment, very inclusive view.
I like that. What about Sister Boy Ingim?
Her story is interesting too. She became a monastic quite young, at 21.
Younger than many, maybe?
Yeah. She chose Plum Village over going clubbing, as she puts it. Her sister was already a nun there, which was her initial connection.
So family influence played a part.
It did. But she describes wrestling with the decision herself, whether to stay, and then just simply writing her aspiration letter, like an intuitive leap.
Sometimes it's just deciding.
Exactly. And she talks about being surprised that monastics are human. They make mistakes.
Huh. Good reminder for us all.
Right. It breaks down that perfect image. Acceptance is key, she learned.
Does she share any specific practices?
She mentions nightly reflection, looking back on the day, setting an aspiration for the next. Sounds like a really grounding practice.
Practical.
Very. And she tells the story of Magnolia Grove Monastery in Mississippi, founded by Vietnamese Americans. That sense of community, connection to nature, it comes through strongly.
Building Sangha in a new place.
Yeah. And her simple practices, like asking, what am I grateful for? And seeing her breath as her best friend. So accessible.
Little anchors in the day. And their sister Ingim's story. This one sounded really powerful.
Oh, it is. Deeply powerful. She talks about her discomfort wearing the traditional headscarf.
Okay.
She realized it triggered these deep, uncomfortable associations with the Aunt Jemima stereotype from her childhood as an African-American girl. The shame she was taught to feel.
Wow. Unpacking those layers of cultural conditioning.
Exactly. And the realization she had that shunning that image was like shunning a part of herself, her ancestors, that history of slavery and discrimination.
That's profound, facing the painful history.
It really is. She saw that embracing those images and the pain they hold was a necessary step towards healing for herself and for her ancestors.
So her perspective shifted entirely.
Completely. Now she sees that image, Aunt Jemima, with mindfulness, with understanding, even gratitude for the journey that led her to become a monastic.
Transforming the relationship with her own history. Incredible.
Truly transformative. Mindfulness allowing that deep shift.
Okay, how about Brother Phap Kin, Dharma Meridian?
His story is about coming to monastic life later after a long career. Shows it's never too late for that calling.
Right, so he had an established life.
Yeah. He'd been interested in meditation, visited Buddhist sites in India, but reading John Kabat-Zinn and then doing a peace walk with Thay in Paris were the big turning points.
Those direct encounters.
Mm-hmm. And there's this fun anecdote about a Vietnamese monk predicting he'd be wearing brown someday.
And he ended up wearing the brown Order of Inner Being jacket.
Exactly. Unexpected fulfillment. But he describes the real internal struggle, the courage it took to leave his life in Paris.
Giving up security for the unknown path.
Driven by this desire to deepen his bodhisattva practice. And he says after he made the decision, he felt this incredible lightness. No regrets.
Following that deep inner pull.
Yeah, powerful.
And Brother Phap Track. His story starts young, too.
Yes, exposed to Buddhism through his mother, time in a refugee camp. But then he talks about running away from home as a teen.
A difficult start.
Yeah, but then a retreat with Thay completely turned him around, inspired him to change his life, his behavior.
Another example of that pivotal encounter.
Definitely. He also mentions being initially drawn to the sort of magical side of Buddhism, rather than the human example of the Buddha. Interesting reflection.
Yeah. And the struggle to give up habits.
He's very honest about how hard it was to let go of seeking constant entertainment, that need for distraction.
Relatable for many, I think.
For sure. But he came to deeply appreciate the simple stuff, breathing, walking meditation as profound, the challenge of just being ordinary.
Finding depth and simplicity.
Right. And learning patience, acceptance, living at the EIAB, European Institute of Applied Buddhism, essential community skills.
Almost there with the journeys.
Yeah.
Brother Fat Man.
His perspective touches on prayer. He started out wanting a joyful livelihood, something most people want.
Sure.
Time in India got him reflecting on death and birth. Real turning point stuff.
Contemplating the big picture.
Yeah. And he realized in his lay relationship that just being happy enough wasn't actually enough for him deep down. That led him towards monasticism.
Seeking something more profound.
And seeing living examples like Thay's walking meditation was huge for him. He calls monastic life a vocation that brings joy.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
Isn't it? And he sees himself as an archaeologist of his habit energies, digging into them.
Huh. Love that image.
You do.
Mm.
And he views prayer as mindfulness and celibacy as a way to make all actions sacred. Interesting reframing.
Shifting the perspective on traditional ideas.
Exactly.
And finally, Brother Phap.
His is a brief reflection, but it captures something essential. Monastic life as constant change, growth, letting go, and crucially the shift from I to we.
Community focus again.
Always coming back to the Sangha, the dynamic shared journey.
Okay, wow. Those are some incredibly rich and varied stories.
Really gives you a feel for the lived experience.
So the third and final theme from the issue.
Yeah.
This is about applying mindfulness in really difficult situations, right? Finding joy amidst suffering.
Yeah, this section is intense, but also incredibly hopeful. It shows mindfulness isn't just for calm moments, it's for the thick of life.
Where do we start with this?
Peter Kuhn's piece, Love Letter from Auschwitz, it's profound. It's an account of a mindfulness retreat held at Auschwitz.
At the concentration camp itself.
Yeah. And their approach was mainly just bearing witness, being present with the place, processing it individually.
Not a lot of talking or structured teaching.
Apparently not, just being there. And he describes his reactions, seeing the piles of belongings, the human hair. It's visceral.
Unimaginable.
And the guide said something simple but chilling. The Holocaust came from thinking one group is better than another. And Peter realized, that seed is in me too.
That's a hard realization. Confronting one's own potential.
Deeply confronting. He even noticed impatience, anger rising in himself there, recognizing those as the seeds of violence.
Even in that space.
But then, the surprise, he found beauty. Nature persisting amidst the horror of Birkenau.
Beauty amidst the ashes.
Yeah, leading to this insight that nothing is all one thing. Not all horror, not all beauty. Interconnectedness again.
And meditating on the train tracks.
Yes. He describes seeing himself as both Nazi officer and prisoner in that moment, an attempt at radical empathy.
Trying to understand the unthinkable.
And realizing how precious the smallest kindness becomes in such a place. But the peak experience, feeling this unfathomable love, connecting him to his Sangha, ancestors, descendants, right there in Auschwitz.
Love in that place.
That's what he describes. He felt he went there to heal, to expand his compassion, to include even the abhorrent. It's humbling.
Truly. What an account. Then there's the story about the prison.
Right. Leslie Rawls and Carl Dunlap Jr. talking about bringing mindfulness practice to inmates in North Carolina.
Mindfulness in prison. How did that go?
It shows the potential for peace even there. An inmate named Daniel actually started the Sangha.
An inmate initiated it. That's inspiring.
Yeah, and they describe Carl's transformation through practice. Leslie, the staff. They noticed him becoming less tense, more peaceful.
Tangible changes.
Definitely. And little things, like Carl mindfully washing dishes or just being quietly present with a dying inmate. It shows that cultivated empathy.
Presence is compassion.
Exactly. And the Sangha provided support, a balm for troubled hearts, they called it. Community matters everywhere.
Absolutely. What about the Old Path Sangha?
Valerie Brown tells their story. Celebrating 10 years, it highlights the slow, steady work of building Sangha. It takes time, commitment.
Patience and perseverance.
Totally. It started as a Zendo, moved eventually to an Episcopal chapel, shows adaptability, interfaith connections too.
Nice. And they use specific practices.
Yeah, beginning anew for conflicts, studying mindfulness trainings, practical tools for community harmony, and the point that even a small Sangha can be deeply nurturing.
Size isn't everything.
Right, it's the quality of practice and connection.
And the Vancouver story. Preparing for a big retreat.
That's Jeannie Seward-McGee. She talks about the huge effort involved from volunteers and how that work itself became a practice, stretching them.
The organizing itself is mindfulness practice.
Kind of, yeah. Cultivating community spirit through service.
Yeah.
She contrasts it with an earlier, smaller retreat with Tay, showing the different dynamics.
Interesting comparison.
And their practice center is in a poorer area, which she says fosters gratitude. Seeing suffering firsthand can do that. They also relied on guidance from senior monastics for decisions. Sangha support again.
Okay. The issue also touched on some books and films.
Just briefly, Reviews of One Buddha is not enough, and Colors of Compassion seemed focused on collective awakening, liberation, especially for people of color.
Important themes.
And the film On the Road with Thich Nhat Hanh sounds like an intimate portrait.
Resources for further exploration.
Exactly. And also a review of the 10 Oxerding paintings.
Ah, the classic Zen sequence.
Right. Emphasizing that enlightenment isn't out there to find. It's already within us.
Waiting to be uncovered.
A core message. And finally, they include subscription info for the Mindfulness Bell itself.
Handy. Keep the learn going.
Yeah, really valuable resource.
So wrapping this up, we've really covered a lot of ground from this one issue. These threads seem so interwoven, don't they?
Definitely. Finding that inner home, the deep transformations possible through practice, especially in community.
And then applying that mindfulness, that compassion, right in the face of suffering, finding joy even in difficulty.
Yeah, these stories and teachings, they offer so many different perspectives on what it means to live mindfully. It's not just one thing.
It really isn't. So thinking about all this,
Yeah.
it leaves me wondering, for anyone listening, what does finding your true home actually mean for you day to day?
Good question. How does it translate personally?
And maybe, how could you intentionally claim more of those? What did Peter Kuhn call them? Moments of exquisite healing. How could you cultivate those, even when things are tough?
Yeah. How to find that space for healing amidst the messiness of life. It's something to chew on, for sure.
Definitely food for thought.
The journey is personal, ultimately. These stories just like the path a bit.
Well said. Thanks so much for joining us on this deep dive. We really appreciate you bringing your curiosity and exploring this with us.